Hello and welcome to this week's Digi-Tools and Accrual World episode. We are delighted to be talking to you in today's episode about a few things that we've got on our mind. We catch up with Dave from FreeAgent on MTD and how you can transition clients across. We're also very excited to talk about this week's app news, some really interesting developments that are happening in the tech space that are fairly scary but super smart. Before we go any further, I'm going to throw it across to Ryan Piercy, who is also joining me on today's episode so that we can really start getting into the detail, because that is what Ryan is really well known for, is getting into the detail on the technology and seeing how we can, what the implications are of embedding these types of things into practices. Ryan, how the devil are you?
What an introduction. I don't know if you call me boring or insightful. It's one of those two, isn't it? But it's lovely to be back on with you as well. Now, I think the last couple of episodes I've had John always challenging me with his knowledge on AI, but I think, it's going to be a more dynamic conversation with you, Indi, I think.
You mean less Johnologue? I agree.
Yeah, that's John Locke. It's wonderful to be back with, as well as talking to FreeAgent. We've got conversation with Employment Hero later. And not to forget our episode sponsor this week, which is AdSum. But before any of that, as we get into the weeds, I'd just like to know, how are you, Indy? It feels like I'm not caught up with you. You've been having a lot of fun, enjoying the end of summer?
Yeah, I mean, most of the year had been a little bit of a, for most people, obviously, didn't quite go the way that I'd hoped it would go. And it was nice to have the 2 months of summer off completely. So I'd given myself the task of basically resurfacing September 1st and figuring out where to put my flag again. It's really interesting to come back straight into what feels like a very different place that from where I left off, bizarrely. Perhaps that's because people are scary about what's going to happen as we see the most of that VC and PE money has started to change hands at a different rate when they look at the technology sectors overall, especially those SaaS-based companies. So I think what we're seeing now is there's a bit of a pause to while we understand what happens with AI. And I've obviously been fortunate to be able to put myself into the mindset of really looking at what else is going on out there across all different industries, and in particular with a lot of fintechs and a lot of different tech-assisted, tech-enabled businesses. And there's a scary trend out there in terms of now vibe coding is as easy as literally saying your alphabet. I think we're going to see a change really that comes about in most business practices. I'm definitely seeing that there's a lot of worry because these businesses have built a model in the way that they were told to, this SaaS-based business model, and then you've got a lot of employees, you've got this, you need to keep up that growth. But if we're starting to see more of the firms take ownership of the technology, what is that going to mean for all of those technology companies who have built businesses out of features, let's call them? So that has been an interesting little jaunt, shall I say, for the last 1 month. And now putting into practice, I guess, the fact that, there's never before has it been easier to make sure that you work with other companies who are having this challenge and looking at what they need to do. And lucky for me, I'm quite good at pivots. So
Yeah, impressive. I mean, I got a new car, not quite the same as delving into the world of AI.
I did think of you. And I don't know if maybe the people that listen to our pod think of you when they think of this as well. But it's the drama of the Ryder Cup. Oh,
Yeah.
You didn't tell me.
Yeah, it's immense. And to be honest, it was a bit different this year in the fact that we went so far ahead, Europe, and then it was more of a, can we cling on to it? And as the Americans fought back, normally it's a bit tighter as we kind of go into the final day. But yeah, it was dramatic. And what was abnormal is the amount of matches that went down to the final hole. Normally they start finishing like 15th, 16th, and you understand that it's going in a certain direction. You just did not know where this was going to finish. And it was very exciting.
No, and you know what? I didn't also expect to hear so many like loutish golf fans. It's only ever been associated with football, but my God, you golfers, you really know how to drink a pint, don't you?
Well, I think we have to clarify that this was American fans, not us very polite English and European fans. There was a lot of, how to put it politely, there was a lot of very surprised people watching it and taking part in it from the European side.
Yeah. I didn't like it. I will admit. I got very
No.
frustrated watching it. Just the amount of aggression that was there.
I think they feel that they're helping their team by intimidating the Europeans. But what actually seemed to happen is they put off their American team, as we've seen in the first 2 days. So yeah, it completely backfired on them. And hopefully they do something about it going forward, because it's gone way too far now.
Yeah. We all believe in karma, so in your face, America. No, I'm joking. Honestly, it was really good to watch, and I liked the overall. I really enjoyed it. It was very dramatic, though, so I'll be giving that a little look in next time. I think we should definitely consider it one of our weekends for our little get-togethers.
Are you thinking we need a Digi-Tools and Accrual World style Ryder Cup off for all the apps? Maybe that's something we can create.
Next up, we're talking about motivating clients to get ready for MTD in part 2 of our interview with Dave Norwell from FreeAgent.
From my point of view, when I look at what practices are doing and how clients react to them, even if the relationship is a fairly sort of simple compliance relationship insofar as they do their end of year tax returns, or they maybe do their accounts and the tax returns, however that might work, is that those clients still expect to remain compliant, and they expect their accountant or bookkeeper to assist them in remaining compliant. And MTD is fundamentally a compliance project, even though it comes with a technology badge and digitization wrapped around it. If clients do not get on board with this, or taxpayers don't get on board with this, there will eventually be penalties to pay, and there'll be implications other than just professional costs and other things that are associated with it. So I think that's quite a big lever for a lot of practices to pull, and maybe we don't emphasize that enough, or maybe we haven't really been brave enough to say, look, our job is to keep you compliant. Let's see how we go about that. And let's not worry about the technology, because there's lots of technology, obviously FreeAgent, but a whole bunch of others. Plus, we talked about it, the bridging software as well. There's a sort of a middle ground if needed to do this. It's about accountants helping their clients to figure out what's the right path to get there without making it overly complicated, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think there's a tendency on the profession side to complicate it, because essentially it's something a lot of people don't want to do. We know from a data perspective, there's very few firms that have everything where they want things to be in terms of having data we can pull that's accurate, that's accessible, that we can segment. The reality is most practices probably don't have that. So it makes the project itself hard. So I think from the client side, yeah, it's about making them compliant and having that, but also accepting from a practice side that it's an imperfect project that we need to make a start on. We can't make it complete before we start. And that's another thing I think you see a lot. But you're right, the client side and the client communication, I think, because we always think if you go to a client with a message, that's it. But what I've really noticed as well is the nuance in messaging with clients, which has been interesting as practices have worked through iterations of messaging. Because obviously I see that from like an outsider's perspective and don't get too much involved, but there's some real kind of stories to tell in there. So I think, yeah.
I was just about to say, I bet there are, because it's one of those, is it like the carrot and the stick? So either people are like towards motivated on the goal, so it's 10,000 steps is the target for the day, I'm going to hit 10,000 steps.
Yeah.
Or it's the way you are avoiding as like the consequence of not acting. So I'm quite interested to know how much at the moment is towards motivated versus you're away from motivated.
Yeah, I think what John says, I spin it from a technology perspective, but the reality is people don't want to get in trouble with HMRC. So the stick bit is the bit that will probably get most people to react.
But does that mean that we're just going to be waiting until one day before the deadline and everyone's like, rush towards the beaches?
I was going to qualify that, but the stick will make them react. But what we've seen, interestingly, is the adoption of technology by clients, that when we started projects, the message from accounts would be, my client never gets on technology. My client won't be interested. And I'm not going to say that that's not true in certain circumstances, but what we have seen when we're doing some onboarding projects, which is another bit, be interesting to have a little chat about, but we've seen that kind of been disproven. The age thing is often brought up. My client's too old to use technology. The reality is I've been on with our implementation team with sole traders who would be considered too old to use technology. And in fact, have been the most excited when you've shown them something like the mobile app. The attitude is, why haven't I used this before? Like, I can take a picture of my receipt. I can send an invoice. It's new for them. And that does create a bit of excitement. I'm not saying in every case, but I have seen it with my own eyes. Same with the landlords. The landlords are an interesting cohort, we all know, in lots of ways. And some of them will just want the compliance, but I just want to be compliant, I'm not bothered. But similarly, there are those that are interested, they're businessmen and businesswomen at the end of the day, that they want to know how their investments are doing. They want to look at that property and see if it's profitable. And these tools, whatever it is, will allow you to do that. So I think it is possible, and it takes a bit more effort and it takes a bit more time and thought, but it is possible to bake the carrot in with a stick, whichever it is. Both approaches need to be there, depending on the client. But I think if you go all for all stick, you're not really giving the client the fair crack of the whip, which is, I know John and I would say, because we're in technology, but we know that technology does give these clients such big advantage and will continue to do so as technologies develop. So to get them on that train is a good thing for most clients.
Yeah. And you touched on implementations, Dave, and as you said, work in technology, and implementations can be as complex as you want to make them, but sometimes they can be incredibly simple. But I guess from our point of view, when we do implementations with our clients, what we're looking for is, what's the upside of this? It's not about just putting technology in for technology's sake, but there's got to be a time saving, or there's got to be something else that you can do as a consequence of that, whether it's stitch this together with another piece of software and things. Obviously with MTD for it, so we're talking about a compliance stick that we talked about. But I see one of the opportunities of being, when I speak to particularly landlords who've maybe got a slightly larger portfolio, is they've probably got a really good handle on, I've got 6-7 properties, I know what kind of money I'm making. But when I drill down into the granularity of like property A versus property B versus property C, for example, maybe don't have that kind of visibility or don't have that kind of knowledge in front of them at a click of a button. Is that something that you're starting to see as you've been going through this implementation process?
Yeah, 100%. And it's not in every case, but one of my colleagues with one of the firms we're working on, that they really did focus on that bit. They took a lot of time to think about the different cohorts of clients, and that they went to their landlord client base quite early because they thought it's going to be tricky. And at the beginning of the project, we were all basically like that. We were all compliance minded. So it was all, if we can get the clients on the software, get the property set up and the ownership set up, then that's tick box. But as you got into the kind of training sessions, and I went to a few of them where we were actually doing one-to-one training with some of the clients just to get a good view on it. What you saw was that when the clients saw the information in front of them, that was a point they went, oh, it was because they'd not really thought of it in those terms. But when you visualize it for them in technology, it's in software, then that light lights up and their natural instincts, oh, that's interesting. Now, how much they're doing it. So it might be, as from a compliance perspective, that the firm is doing still what they always do, all the bookkeeping, et cetera, et cetera. But there is that element that there's engagement then in the software. They're not just have it in the background and have no interaction with it. So I think it is a mindset bit. And like you say, once you visualize for it, I mean, any software, any kind of business, sole trade or landlord, that there is the chance that they'll be more engaged and get it. Like they might not get, they might question the logic, they might question that, and we don't tackle that. But the technology bit, we all know we always use technology in so many bits of our lives that we might moan at the beginning, but then we get used to and in the end rely on. Same here. It's the same here. It's just how we present it to these clients. And they're all very different. To Indi's point, they're all different types of people. They're all different people at the end of the day. And different people need different communication methods and different hand-holding, which obviously then adds the complexity of these things because it's not one size fits all.
On that merry note, how do you feel? FreeAgent is on track, beating the curve, leading the curve? What do you think? Where are you at with this?
Honestly, in my job, like, you're always by definition behind the curve from our perspective, because we want people to move quickly, quicker than they want to move. We have to be empathetic to, this is one bit for an accountant. We know there's a million other jobs to do. There's a million other things to get around. So always behind. I think my message to practices I work with and to my team is that forward momentum is the thing. Like, whatever that looks like, if we're moving forward in some way, let's be good with that. And for each firm, that'll look different. For some, it's still getting to grips with the data and seeing where those clients sit, segmenting. And for some now, it's looking at, how do I get these clients on? I try not to get too bogged down in the fact projects are behind, because everyone feels behind. If you talk to any practice, they say we're behind. We want to be further ahead mostly. But my response is, sorry.
So I was going to say, we're going to agree with you. You're all behind.
Yeah. I think with all these things, with every, so I remember even this summer I went to see a firm, and the partner had been in the game a long time. And she said, at the end of the day, we've been in with all these kind of changes. They are massive in the moment and they cause disruption. And this is a big one, but in 2 or 3 years, we'll be looking back and everyone will go, oh, what's that? Oh yeah, next thing now, because these things come and go. It's just how we help practices, how we help clients to do it in the best way we can with the least impact. At the end of the day, is the other thing, we've all got businesses to run. The aim is for us to run businesses, make money, and this should be a tool to help that. And that's it. How we do that is another question.
Amazing. As always, Dave, it's great to catch up with you. So thank you very much for your time. And hopefully for the firms listening, there's a few little nuggets that they can take away in terms of like, how do they get that? And I really like your analogy in terms of like just having that forward momentum, not just pushing it off and delaying this for another day or another week and stuff. And that's very easy to say in the context of everything else that goes on, particularly when it's busy practice life. But I think you're absolutely right, because the last thing that you want to be doing is getting to April and then suddenly realizing that you don't have a plan and that you're clients are clamoring for answers, which is just going to add to more pressure. But once again, Dave, thank you very much for your time, and really great to catch up with you.
Thanks for having me. Thank you very much.
All right, so kicking off our app news this week, Karbon has acquired Ada, a partnership that I think would make a really good pairing in our next Ryder Cup lookalike challenge. It's an AI platform transforming how accountants automate reconciliations, close the books, and deliver advisory insights. More than an acquisition, it shows a sort of vision or a step towards redefining practice management with AI at its core, which I have spoken about in the last few weeks to various number of people, that the AI and practice management seems like a logical pairing, and we haven't heard enough about that. So really good to see that Karbon is looking at this from a data perspective, looking at things like duties that you can perform, automating the period close, getting real-time KPI dashboards and AI-generated commentary, and more interestingly, unlocking AI advisory assistant to identify new opportunities, which I am really, I think it sounds so great on paper, but I feel very skeptical over. Maybe you can reassure me, Ryan, on this.
Yeah, I mean, it's all data driven, right? A lot of the time, accountants will have advisory conversations with the client when the client has brought something up that they ever want to do or they have done. There's certain things, such as when you approach a VAT threshold, or they're doing a purchase, or they're extracting some money from the business. And all of those, if they're doing it, we could provide some advice on, but we're not necessarily aware that's happening. Mm-hmm. So if you've got an integrated data platform that can pull things into your task management system, then you can already pre-create some draft tasks. So if this has happened, do you want to have a look at it? Do you want to talk to your client about it? So it's more providing the insights up front into a holistic system where you'll be having those conversations with clients. And I think that's what Karbon are trying to achieve here by integrating into this platform and sucking data in. It's something that Silverfin were focusing on when they were integrating their data metrics into their working papers. And I see a lot more of this. And I guess the power of these data platforms is not only about pricing, it's not only about accuracy, it's all about forward gazing. And I think that's what Karbon are trying to achieve. I completely agree with you, Indi, and it can be quite helpful, but there are limitations. I've got something as well from Karbon, and this is a tool called Brieff, which is a meeting workflow tool. It allows you to prep, run, and follow up on client meetings with their own integrated AI note taker that is now integrated into Karbon. I know it does quite a lot, and it's all about taking that meeting to a next level. Brieff have been doing this for a while. You may have heard of Vinyl, who I guess started the AI note taker and went into the direction of the meeting control. Started with meeting control and gone into AI note takers. And the integration into Karbon, once again, allows that to superpower what you're doing directly inside the Karbon platform. So auto link clients and contacts between Karbon and Brieff. Every recorded meeting then in Brieff puts a link directly into Karbon. So you reference that, extract the information out of it. Each note that's, I guess, done inside Brieff puts a direct link into Karbon as well. So if you're doing something, you've got action points, etc., you can bring off those directly into Karbon as well. Once again, having a centralized platform for anything that's critical and then linking out to anything where you need to find more information. This is something that I would expect to happen more often, and we're probably going to see similar tools such as Vinyl do it as well. But really interesting to see what they're doing here. I'd expect Brieff to integrate into other platforms in the space, such as FYI over time, but appear to pick Karbon first.
Oh, I love this. But this actually solves what we just said, that actually once you've got really good discovery, if you've got these meetings already in a state where it can be understood by the system, if it's underpinned by a really good LLM or at least AI type of agent that's understood that it can perform a certain task or duty. This is exactly what they needed. I'm surprised it's an integration and so just some direction that they would take themselves to build out that type of functionality. Don't you think that practice management in itself would benefit from having that?
Yeah, Brieff have been the ones that have triggered the integration rather than Karbon, I believe. So Brieff are taking control and powering more or giving more value to their system by integrating into task management. Karbon, I guess, could do that, but they're doing so much at the moment. So they're focusing on a client portal, more AI via that, rather than, I guess, the meeting control, which has not been their bag historically. And by the sounds of it, by the integration to Ada, they're focusing mostly on data, on tasks or finance systems rather than your meetings. So they may build that in time. They may even buy Brieff.
But that's where the value comes from, the meetings and being able to understand what else is a need for advisory, right?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think you can get value from both. And I believe that the meeting side is still a hugely untapped resource and something that will get more and more prevalent over time. I think realistically where we're at is that Karbon is still looking at more historical transactions rather than forward meeting advisory.
Okie dokes. Talking about non-historical and actually instead a jump to real time, Dext has a WhatsApp integration, which is, I think this is great. Another way for them to just take data in and make it as easy as possible for Dext customers to add other users to it by adding them through their Dext interface, and then they do a couple of little steps to enable it via the WhatsApp integration. And then essentially it means that you can then start snapping receipts that were just from the camera roll and uploading them to WhatsApp and then getting them into the system, which is just, I just think, isn't this just in keeping with everything that we would like from Dext? Being able to use systems, being able to use technologies that are already in everyone else's diction and workflow. WhatsApp has become so much more of a business tool recently. Ryan, anything to add on that?
No, I think realistically, Dext have seen what others have done in this space and gone, that's a great idea. We're going to do it because they're not the first, but easy way of getting information in, makes sense. And as they keep doing, keep releasing new functionality all the time. I've got something from QuickBooks. You may have heard us talking about the fact that Xero have overhauled their UI interface. It's the time for the finance systems to do that because QuickBooks are doing the same. They had done it over in the US and it's now come over to the UK. And they're trying to make it a cleaner task-based interface. So rather than having those navigation tools, you have to click a link and then find what you need to go to. It should be surfacing the critical things that you need to interact with on a regular basis. They've essentially cut down the clicks, made it slicker. When I guess I look at it and how it looks and feels, yes, it looks more modern. They've changed it to bring navigation slightly across the top as well as their normal left-hand navigation window. Something that's been very different between the likes of QuickBooks compared to Xero and FreeAgent. And their dashboard widget is trying to bring more to the fore, so you're not having to drill into the system to get information. That's something that has been incredibly frustrating for a lot of people that have interacted with QuickBooks over the years. So I think if this is done well, this will actually make a huge difference on people being able to adopt QuickBooks quickly, which you'd think they should be able to with the name. But the problem is that most people that are coming from a traditional system trying to pick up either QuickBooks or Xero found Xero easier to navigate without having training. QuickBooks, I believe, are now going to be shifting that and making it a lot easier to interact with them, I guess, with their platform. They're also standardizing how it looks alongside other tools like MailChimp. The reason for this is that they've got an Intuit style platform that goes across all their products and a consistent look and feel. So going from a traditional QuickBooks only model to now an Intuit platform, it means that bringing all of their tools into one, I guess, layout and structure will mean it easier adoption across all of their various functionalities.
Cross-sell and upsell, cross-sell and upsell, that's what they need. I've got something different, more about month end and how that is a juggling act, I guess, for accountants in terms of multiple clients, invoices, expenses and payments, and the looming sort of VAT deadlines that come with that. So there's a new integration that's taking place between Acting Office and FreeAgent. So if we took, for example, a freelancer client who logs their expenses and invoices in FreeAgent as they go, normally an accountant would perhaps export and rekey that data into a practice system. Not always necessarily, but in this case, can mean hours of repetitive work and room for error. But in this integrations case, so everything syncs automatically into Acting Office. Payments, invoices, expenses are all mapped and updated in real time. And month-end reconciliation is generally faster. So the VAT submissions are already structured. Very interesting, very good. As small businesses then get a bit more accurate insights faster, and everyone avoids the spreadsheet shuffle that happens between different parties. So it's not flashy, but it's just a smarter workflow to make the month end a little less painful. Not that I have experienced it firsthand, but Ryan, any thoughts on that?
Firstly, another great integration from FreeAgent. They are very selective in what they're doing and building that out. And Acting Office is becoming more and more prevalent in the UK practice management space. And I think their great fit is for big firms where they're trying to automate a lot of their smaller work. It makes sense to integrate into FreeAgent because they're becoming a more dominant force in the space. And because of the way the task management automates automatically, although I'm just saying automating twice now, in the Acting Office platform, then sucking the data directly out of FreeAgent to help that. It just makes complete sense to me. I've got something a little different, but I like doing on a regular basis, and that is the Xero app releases. And this one is for September. So there are a lot of releases across New Zealand and Australia in the last month, but we do have a few that are either worldwide or UK, and I'll touch on them now. Windsor.ai, a great name, feels like that should be UK specific, but is global. Integrates the Xero data into business intelligence tools, Power BI, BigQuery, but also Excel. So I guess more of that data reporting, which we're seeing from a lot of tools at the moment, pulling them directly into Excel or the Power BI platforms to make use of the data in a much more smarter way. But we've also had a lot of, I guess, tools that are similar to Dext, right? That data extraction automation process. We've got one called See My Bills, which is for the UK. We've got one called, and I'm terrible with names if you're aware of this, but
Kion. Yeah.
Kion. That's Qyon. And then we've also got Tofu as well, which is, it says automating bookkeeping, but realistically, when you look at what it's doing, it's basically a data extraction tool for the purposes. And then one that's been around for a long time and has obviously rebuilt their integration to Xero is Complete. Complete is a bigger, more powerful automation tool, like similar to Lightyear rather than Dext, auto entry, etc. And then the one I thought that was, I guess, a bit more different was Realm Real Time. So the platform for logistics, freight, and warehouse management. Everything else seems to be focused either on reporting or on, I guess, that data capture, whereas Realm is at least looking at a functional, industry-specific solution that integrates into Xero. Oh, sorry, one last one.
No, I was going to say, I don't know why you didn't go for the last one, because it's the one that I would have also picked on.
It should have started on,
isn't it?
It is. So it is a funeral management solution and sending your invoice and the payments into Xero, and it's called Evolution FMS.
Funeral management system.
Which is not finance management system, but funeral management system. I'm not sure if it's a term that's used widely around the world, but yeah, if you are in the funeral management business and wanted something that integrates into Xero, check out Evolution FMS.
Which, yes, reminds us and sobers us up to think in life there's only two things that are really, two things that are constant: death and taxes.
Oh, and Excel. That seems to be constant in the UK accounting market anyway.
Speaking of Excel, woo, what a nice link. Thank you, Ryan. Accountants, brace yourselves. Microsoft's just turbocharged Excel and Word with agent mode. It sounds like something from The Matrix. Agent mode. Whew, it's a game changer. Oh, we always hear that, don't we? But this is actually something that helps you handling messy client spreadsheets, P&Ls, and reports to an AI that not only then cleans and organizes, but analyzes that data and also creates charts, flags, anomalies. You can draft a PowerPoint for a board meeting or summarize client notes, all through prompting. And these are tasks that once required, say, like the junior level of accountants, and they would have hours of, say, formatting, reconciliations, etc. This means that all of that is now automated. So I think the good thing is that we're now empowering younger people who come into the world of accounting to start on something that's much higher value for themselves. It's a huge opportunity for faster reporting and reducing risks, especially if you're willing to be really adaptable. I don't think that we can say that with this latest release, I'd say Agent AI is not just coming, it is here. And it's dramatically going to change the way that most firms do business. I tried to dig through quickly to see how would one of the AIs recommend that you could prompt it. So you could create a monthly P&L report for my client XYZ to show revenue, expenses, net profit, highlight variances versus last month, and visualize trends so that you can then have an output of a ready-to-use spreadsheet with income, expenses, etc. You could ask it to build a cash flow forecast for the next 12 months based on current invoices and recurring expenses. You could draft a tax compliance summary for client ABC, covering VAT, corporation tax, self-assessment deadlines, and an action points for their accountant. Or you could use it to say, summarize 50 pages of client correspondence and highlight key accounting action items. So lots of different workflow automation examples that I pulled out from it. If you're interested, we can share some of those as well, just so that you can have a little idea for yourself of how it could revolutionize the way that work gets done in your accounting firm.
Yeah, intriguing. I'd say that the main thing I ever want Excel to do, more than I guess the rest of the Office suite, is to manipulate data or to go, I need this information from that information. Can you give me that? And if it can do that, yes, that is game changing. I know that when I first saw Copilot through Excel, it was really limited in what it could actually deliver on a consistent and accurate basis. So I'm hoping this new iteration actually resolves all of those challenges. And yeah, as you say, it superpowers it, because if you can superpower Excel, then yeah, you're taking, I guess, a lot of problems that accountants face and streamlining it significantly. So yeah, looking forward to that one.
Yeah, that almost sounded a little bit like the start of a Mariah Carey spin-off song, like all I want for Excel to do is, it's getting close to Christmas, so you know what's on the brain.
It is. Yeah, there you go. Christmas presents already. And I guess more a summer present from Xero. At XeroCon Brisbane, they announced the release of the Xero Partner Hub. Not something we picked up in all of their main announcements, but it's something they've talked about more recently. And I think it's quite interesting in what they're doing here, because they've changed the user interface for Blue Xero, where you go in and essentially operate your client data, or your clients do that directly. And if you've not seen it, it's rolling out slowly across Xero licenses. So the banding across the top changes, your dashboard changes, and they're bringing in SIFT advanced reporting. But they're also doing this for the partner area as well. So inside Xero HQ, I guess it's traditionally called, they've now got a homepage which gives you quite detailed information, similar to the dashboard you'd find in the main Xero Blue homepage. You've got information on, I guess, anything you're doing in Xero Tax, anything you're doing regarding, I guess, your clients, such as bank feeds, your organizations that you've got linked in there, who's got access, and I guess overall, like how you're working with your practices as well. So how your VAT returns are being filed, how your tax returns are being filed with them. And this is to try and bring all of the bits that were in various pages throughout Xero into a single unified page so that you can then navigate to them much more easily. As well as this, they've built in their new refreshed version of JAX, so you can ask information or questions across all of this directly inside that homepage as well. Now, this is they're trying to do to reimagine how they can flow AI directly through the platform. So I know they were building the back end for a long time now, and it feels like we're starting to see that come out through the front end in Xero. It's something we asked, and on this podcast repeatedly asked for over probably the last 2 to 3 years, and we're now seeing a lot of it happening in a short period of time. So I think this is a big step forward. Eventually, we might be able to get away from the My Green Xero, which is the old style practice management page, and they'll have all functionality embedded in the Xero HQ platform. So yeah, I like this little release.
Tidy, very nice. I've got something that is, sorry to take us back once more, I should have probably covered it on the last update around agents for a moment. So Sage MTD AI agents, making tax digital for income tax, obviously is about to hit full throttle, or we hope it will hit full throttle in 2026. And Sage has just dropped a Let's call it a little lifeline, an AI agent designed to tackle the looming admin overload. The problem that most firms face is that quarterly submissions and client signups and the sort of missing authorizations and the manual checks that need to be done. Those traditional workflows are slow and fairly error prone and quite stressful at this time. Sage's MTD for IT agent automates the grunt work, segments the clients, and it helps the chasing up of missing documents via email, WhatsApp, or in-app. It generates draft quarterly reports and it optionally sends them for client approval, and it's all very configurable in terms of what you can do to then make that help you and assist you. So it means that the accountant can gradually offload some of the tasks to the agents while keeping an oversight on where it matters. Why does it matter? It's something that early adopters report at the moment saves them hours of client work and reduces the mistakes, and it helps bring a bit more like structure to what is the MTD onboarding process, because I think in the past that's something that even when we were speaking to FreeAgent about this, it's about making sure that you have a very structured approach and that you can take it from one step to another. This isn't one step all the way to the end yet, so it's not fully end to end, but it's a foundational level of working with future AI agents. Perhaps there's some value in getting started early and doing it on something that you already know is going to be a bit of a headache, but that's why I guess Sage have been very clever about launching this ahead of MTD for IT, and it's probably a really good way of getting people through the gateway that is AI to then get them hooked on something that's a green agent for, I shouldn't call it a green agent, should I, but a Sage agent for enhancing other accounting workflows and letting, firms handle the compliance at scale without having to drown in all of the other manual tasks that need to come with these types of making tax digital agendas.
I think a green agent is a great name for it. I think it should be like their superhero name for what they're doing with the MTD space.
If you do really take this, just to say copyright. I have no copyright. I have no copyright at all. Just credit me once. Send me a new bloody water bottle. That's what I need.
Yeah, they're great. They're great little wall bottles at the Sage ones. But no, I think it's a perfect place to do and solve a big pain point, because so many small accounting firms especially are absolutely terrified about the additional burden of MTD for income tax. If you can offload a lot of that additional burden by using an AI agent to, replace those tasks, then why not explore Sage? That seems to be a brilliant way to attack, or as you say, roll out AI into their platform initially. But I think that just brings our app news to a close for this week. And then we now got the conversation with Employment Hero all about payroll and actually how the technology gap is increasing in this space. And I was speaking to a client earlier today, and they were saying about how they've been running payroll on spreadsheets. And when I've had that conversation, as you're about to hear with Kevin, I couldn't believe people were doing that. Turns out there's a lot more out there than I even realized. We're lucky enough to be joined by Kevin Fitzgerald, Managing Director of UK at Employment Hero. And we're talking about the incredibly exciting topic of payroll compliance, because who doesn't want to do this in this world of AI and buzzwords? But it's incredibly important to talk about payroll because it just seems to be ever increasing in complexity. And is this what you're experiencing, Karen, when you're talking to businesses? Are they just finding that it's just more and more stressful all the time?
Yeah, hi Ryan, good to be back. Actually, I think it is an exciting topic, and probably people will feel it when we get into it. When I think about the average SME, on the average business owner, it's not like they're starting at a point where they actually really understand payroll, like from a regulatory perspective, or compliance perspective, or technology perspective. They don't want to have to deal with it. And we see so many, obviously, in the UK outsource it because they need that professional help. But it is a headache, right? And it doesn't go away. It's probably one of those regular moments every month, every week, every 2 weeks, where I don't think they dive into it with gusto, right? And think, I really want to get this done. I just want it to work. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it creeps up on you. You know, I'm running my own payroll now, and it just gets to that point. I'm like, oh God, I've got to do payroll again. And then I'm really lucky enough to have a great system that I use, Employment Hero, to do it for me. And it makes it so much easier for me because it's taking away a large part of the burden. But so many businesses, I guess, are not doing that or worried about doing that, and therefore are looking to outsource. But there's still quite a chunk that don't outsource, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a lot. Like there's even from our data, we see 1/3 still run off spreadsheets. And I think the assumption in that is that they try and run it internally. I can't imagine there's a lot of bureaus or accounting firms that are actually servicing the client still on a spreadsheet. So we'll make the assumption that bureaus and firms are actually have made that digitization switch already. Some maybe on desktop, some maybe on cloud. But yeah, like they outsource, and I agree with what they're doing, because you can't just pick up payroll, right? If you're running a small to medium business and you're a cafe owner, or you got an advertising agency or something like that, it's not like you have the time, right, to sit down and actually learn payroll. And if I was advising somebody, I'd be like, hey, go and find a professional who can help you, because that's why they exist. And there's so many great payroll professionals across the UK. So they're going to be able to give that SME the actual professional help that they need. And it's a real necessity. Like, you just can't take a risk with payroll. You don't want to upset your staff. You don't want your staff to think that there's a problem in the business, because you always see an immediate reaction, right? If payroll is late or it's wrong, people assume there's something wrong with the business, rather than, hey, someone just made a mistake, which can happen.
Yeah, and it is the most time-critical service that you provide, probably in the highest risk area. It is the highest pressure area. And we don't, I think, give, as accountants, enough respect for the repetition and the efficiency that payroll departments and outsourced payroll providers have to go through. But I do have a question to you on what you define as handling things on spreadsheets, because I've seen lots of accounting firms that have a spreadsheet working out what they're supposed to be doing at what time, and they're receiving timesheets in Excel. I think there's still a lot of that going on.
Dude, absolutely. Look, I'm still using spreadsheets every day, right? The range of activities that happens in spreadsheets, like, people just seem to be able to run their business on them. And like, maybe it works for some people. Running payroll on a spreadsheet, I just think it's too complicated, right? Like, you can be littered with it, like errors. I can remember, look, I've spreadsheets. There's probably errors in some of the stuff that I have in front of me today, just because there's too much in it, or I haven't had time to really be diligent and check it. And I'd say just the average person like us, I can call you an average person as well, right? Like, the average person
I am.
Makes mistakes.
Yeah.
Right. But with payroll, you don't get any room for errors. It's like maybe a sports analogy, right? Like, you're playing football, you're in front of the goal. If you do not score, you're like in big trouble. But we think of the best sports stars in the world, they miss and they get criticized.
Yeah.
But I reckon payroll professionals probably get a harder time if they get things slightly wrong. Yeah.
And if simple impacts, if you underpay someone, they're going to realize straight away they're going to have cash flow problems until it's rectified. If you overpay someone, they're going to now normally not realize, spend the money. And then when it comes to you trying to pull that back from them, like, I don't have the money, you can't do that. I need that money now because I've already committed that. So there's an impact in everyone's day-to-day life if you make that error. The challenge, I guess, that for anyone that's running payroll, be that in the business or not, is that trying to remember all the compliance requirements. If you're doing it on a spreadsheet, that all has to be in your head. If you're using a system, a lot of that's being not put to you. You are reviewing it or sense checking it, because the system is doing a lot of it. And with AI coming in as well, there's going to be a lot more of that occurring. Yeah.
And look, we try and put in as many checks and balances, right? Like, into the employment era payroll system, right? Like, we're starting to look at, like, AI, comparison versus last month, last quarter. What are kind of any of the deviations, right? And have you looked at them before you actually hit the big green button to say, like, fully run the payroll? And I think it's really important to understand that it's not about, actually, it is, like, the system can make it easier for you, but you run the system, right? And it's your tool to do your job really well. And like it does, anyone on a spreadsheet, I worry that, one, it does have errors, but two, they think it's correct, right? And they're progressing each month, and the kind of errors are getting greater and more material.
Exactly. Make sure you're on a system, at least as a minimum. Obviously, then try and find the one that works, for you. And that's exactly what we do at Digital Transformers. It's about finding the right system, because they're all working different ways. Look, this is not the end of the conversation, Karen. We're going to keep talking about this stuff over the coming episodes. So thank you for coming on and talking about, I guess, just the challenges that people face with payroll.
So that brings us to a close this week on the episode. We are doing an open call for all practice owners who are in the space to come and join us on a podcast. We want to hear and talk to you about the types of challenges that you're tackling with technology and what your biggest priorities have been this year and looking ahead into next year, what it is that you're trying to grapple with as a challenge. It's an open call to anyone in the space, and we have had a few reach outs before. We've had some regulars on the podcast, but we want as many new faces as possible. I'm going to share with you a diary link, a calendar invite, where you are going to join me and we are going to do a live recording that maybe won't go live, but we'll definitely use it in the podcast if you're happy with it. So it is an open call to anyone in the accounting tech industry. And we look forward to seeing some new faces join us on the show. But if you like this episode, please make sure that you do leave us a review or come and join our community, our Slack channel. We are building things out once more. So we're really looking forward to inviting a lot more people through the door, and we'll catch you on the next one.